Welcome to the Adapted Ambitions podcast. Here we rewrite the rules of success for professional women over 40. This is the place where experience meets reinvention and where we tackle bold career moves, inspiring pivots and strategies to help you create a career and life that you truly love. My name is Ada Offonry. I am a talent leader and career coach with years of experience partnering with professionals at pivotal career crossroads. I've seen it all, from climbing the corporate ladder to leaping off it entirely, and I'm here to help you figure out your next big move. Because let's be honest, the so-called career rules we grew up with, they're really outdated. Your experience isn't just valuable, it's actually your superpower. So I'll show you exactly how to use the superpower to create your best chapter yet. Whether you're thinking about a career change, launching your own business, or you just want more purpose and balance in your work, you're in the right place. Welcome to Adapted Ambitions. Let's dive in. Welcome to today's episode of the Adapted Ambitions podcast. Today we're going to be speaking about the mid-career pivot. What's next for mid-career professionals and what can they do to get there? So let's first of all dive into some data. In the UK, a recent study by Aviva found that 1 in 4 women aged 45 to 54 are considering a career change, with many citing a desire for more meaningful work or better work-life balance. Meanwhile, in the US, the Harvard Business Review reported that women in their 40s and 50s are the fastest growing demographic of entrepreneurs. So, apparently starting a business at 50 is the new buying a convertible at 40. There's also a Microsoft survey from 2023 that found that 70% of mid-career professionals globally want greater flexibility in their jobs. So flexibility is no longer a perk for many mid-career professionals. It's a non-negotiable. Let's dig into what mid-career professionals go on to do when they do pivot their careers. I'll specifically be looking at what women do. So first is finding more meaningful work. So this isn't necessarily about climbing the ladder. This is about finding roles that really align with their values and interests. So less about titles and more about impact. The second thing that a lot of mid-career professional women go on to do when they do pivot is finding opportunities where there's more flexibility. So whether that is to allow them to spend more time with family, give them freedom to pursue other passions, etc. This is about really ensuring that they can continue to drive their careers forward while taking more ownership of their time and having more flexibility. The third is leadership roles. Now, we've talked very briefly about the sort of proverbial glass ceiling that a lot of women encounter. And although, things have gotten better, things haven't gotten as good as they could be. And so for some women, many of them feel that they've paid their dues, they're ready to take charge, they may or may not get that opportunity in their current organization, and so they move on to other opportunities to be able to take on more leadership roles. There's loads of data out there showing that one of the fastest demographic groups for entrepreneurships are professionals in their 40s and 50s. And this is especially true with women. So starting a business isn't just for Silicon Valley, wonder kids in their 20s and 30s. Women are using their decades of experience to launch businesses, to consult and monetize their side hustles. The other thing that a lot of mid-career professionals are going on to do is skills building. So this is a really fantastic opportunity to reskill in an area that is of interest. I remember going to the theater sometime earlier in the year and learning that one of my friends was learning how to code. And I was so excited by that because, coding is such an amazing skill set to have, both for now and also for the future. Technology, particularly, the skill set for software engineers is extremely highly sought after. And so learning how to code really puts yourself in a position where you can get into a job market where your skill sets are highly sought after. So it's not just about moving on to something else, though. By the time people are mid-career, one thing that is often not spoken about is when people just want to take a break, take a beat, take a bit of a pulse. If you think about it, by the time you get to mid-career, you've been working for a good number of years, for a good number of hours. For a lot of people, when you're in the middle of building your career and establishing yourself, you're prioritizing work above other things. And so you're really investing a lot of time and effort into work. And so by the time a lot of people get to mid-career, they kind of want to take stock of how far they've come, where they might want to go next, and they just want to be. They just want to live. So if you've listened to my previous podcast episodes, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for a career sabbatical. I think if you're able to do it, I definitely recommend having a few sabbaticals through the course of your career. It just allows you to live a little, to take stock, to rest, to recoup, and to make decisions about your future from a really clear mind and from a really centered place. So with that in mind, when it comes to a sabbatical is something that a lot of mid-career professionals are also really thinking, really going on to do next instead of moving straight onto another job. A career break isn't necessarily only for burnt out professionals. It can also be for somebody who's been, who's in an extremely good place. They've done really well with their careers, and this is just their chance to step back, travel, maybe pursue some hobbies, or even just, live life, be with family, sleep without having to think about an alarm. I know people who've done multiple things with their time off, from travel to, going on to do research, experimenting with potential new career options, trying out things that they've always wanted to, but they just never had the time for. And so it could be a real great opportunity for rejuvenation. For others, it's not necessarily about going on to do something, but it's more about getting to spend more time with family, spend more time with friends, and just basically enjoy their home, enjoy living on a day-to-day basis and just live in the moment. And so oftentimes as well, a lot of people talk about feeling deeply exhausted after working for many years. So a sabbatical or a career break is an opportunity to just sort of be at one with yourself and just take the time to really kind of rest. So if you're somebody who is in a place where you're considering a pivot or you're considering a career sabbatical, there are a few things that you can do. If a sabbatical is on your mind, then I would say to people, the first thing to really think about is to financially plan for taking a career break. Yes, a career break can be extremely liberating, but if you're not kind of set up financially, all you'll do is just worry, and you might even have to cut short your sabbatical or your career break in order to go back to work. So you definitely want to be sure that you're saving up, you're cutting out unnecessary expenses, and also it might be that you find a side gig so that you're bringing in income without having to dent your savings too much. Bear in mind that if you're taking a career break or a sabbatical without a job to return to, some people can take a sabbatical and come back to their jobs, or have a new job and specifically sort of bake in additional time to take a sabbatical before they start the new job. If that's you, then no problem. But if you're somebody who isn't coming back to a job, remember that part of your financial planning has to also cover the time period when you'll be back and looking for a new job. You don't want to be caught off guard. So it might mean that instead of a 9-month sabbatical, you plan for a 5 or 6 month sabbatical to sort of account for the additional 3 months that you might want to give yourself to find a new position. The second thing to do if you're considering a career break is you want to definitely start setting boundaries now, right? So, you want to be sure that you're planning ahead and so that you can start setting expectations. So for example, in 6 months' time, I won't be available for ABCD, so we've got to do it in the time we have available, that sort of thing. So you want to be letting everybody know. The worst thing you can do is not be very clear about when you intend to take your sabbatical or the work that needs to be done ahead of time, and find that you have to move things, or you have to move your dates, or your sort of break isn't respected because you keep getting pulled in for work. So be sure that you're planning ahead and you can really set clear boundaries. The other thing is, if you're thinking about a sabbatical, is to really think about what you want to do with that time. Now, there's some people who don't want to plan it and just kind of see where it takes them. Time goes very quickly, right? And so you definitely want to be sure that you've taken the time to give it some thoughts. Be very clear on what you might want to do. It might be that you want to start off resting and then you want to travel or whatever it might be, but definitely give it some thoughts and have a plan before you embark on a sabbatical. The sort of caveat to that is obviously if the sort of timing is enforced upon you. So if you suddenly lose your job and you then use it as an opportunity to go on sabbatical, you might not have had the opportunity to sort of preempt it. So that's completely fine. You basically work with it. But if it's something that you're proactively seeking to do, then you want to be sure that you definitely take the time to give it some thought. If a sabbatical is off the table for you and you're mid-career and what you're thinking about is pivoting and you're not quite clear what you might want to pivot onto, but what you do know is that the job you're doing at the moment or the career path that you've been going down is no longer fit for purpose for you, then I'd say that there are a few things to consider. So the first thing is to reassess your values. So really think about what matters to you now, both in terms of what you care about, in terms of the world, what your values are, but also how you want to work, right? So if you want to be more part-time, if you want to still remain full-time, if you want to be in the office, not in the office, etc., really take the time to identify that, because it's really important that you're going out into the market with a clear idea of what you might be after. Oftentimes people don't take the time to think about it, and their sense of what they might want to do becomes about, everything that's opposite to their current role. And this particularly happens if people are in a bad situation in their current role. But you find that if you moved on to something with similar characteristics, just a different company or different people, you find yourself wanting to be back on the market very quickly afterwards. So definitely take the time to assess your values, assess your lifestyle, and be very clear on what you want to do next. Now, the other thing I'd say is, if you're ready for action, is you might not necessarily want to jump fully, right? You might want to dip your toe in. So maybe that is by volunteering, freelancing, doing a short course, maybe using your holiday to try things out rather than to travel. So think about giving yourself the opportunity to make as informed a decision as you possibly can. So, before you sort of throw in the towel where you are, maybe you want to experiment a little bit. The other thing I'd say, particularly if you're considering a move, but you lack clarity on what that might be, I'd say that you probably want to think about maybe seeing a career coach or seeing a therapist and really getting your mind right. So you'd be surprised at how many people don't pursue the thing they're really after because they lack the confidence and they've convinced themselves that that desire that they have can't be for them for XYZ reason. And by taking the time to really kind of work on those inner issues, you free yourself up and you begin to sort of design a life that is more suited to the things that you genuinely want and would genuinely help you build contentment rather than going after the thing that you think you should go after because it's the thing that brings in money, but you lack any sort of real fulfillment. I hope that's been helpful. If you're somebody who has been curious about what people are doing mid-career, if you're somebody who finds yourself in mid-career knowing that you no longer want to continue in your current path, but you're not really sure what direction to go down, I hope this episode has given you some ideas of things to consider and some tangible steps that you can take to really figure out what to do next. And remember, even if you're in a place where you haven't quite decided, I think just simply acknowledging that you know that you want to move on to something else is a good starting point. In coaching, there's something we call the shuffle phase, which is often necessary for people who are making a significant change in their lives. And so the shuffle phase is really where we learn to to kind of rationalize this new thing that we're after, where, you know, our old self gets to sort of battle it out with the new emerging self, where you figure out what might work, what might not work. You speak to people, you experiment, you get new information, you try out different things. And then oftentimes a lot of people find that after going through that process, which might involve some help with a professional like a coach or a therapist, after you kind of get to the end of that point, people find themselves in a position where they can be a little bit more decisive about what the next step is for them. And part of what helps you become more decisive is because obviously you've had the shuffle phase to go through a bunch of different scenarios. So I hope this helps. As always, open to your thoughts and your feedback and ideas of other topics you'd like me to cover on subsequent episodes. But in the meantime, see you, and I hope the rest of your week goes well. Thank you.